Can I just start by saying I've been to a lot of conferences, but this is my first Tusla one, and I hope I'm invited back next year because it's the most exciting one I've ever been at. Also, I would like to, pick out Lindsay Markey and thank her personally for inviting me to be here today because I have a feeling it's going to be an amazing day. And Tusla, of course, for asking me to take part. I suppose when I tell my story, it can go many different directions, and I do have a 10-page speech here. So that I won't go off script, but I hope that what I share with you today will give you a little bit of insight as to what it actually means to be a traveller in Irish society today. And how I'm going to go about doing that is sharing my story in education with you. Because I know the power of one single person, whether that person be a social worker or a teacher, a parent, a friend, a family member. I know the power of how one single person can make an absolute impact on your life and change the direction that you can head off in. So how I'll start that story is with my very first, my earliest memory. I've tried, and I really do think and believe that this is my earliest memory of school. So as a traveller child, I'm standing on a bunk and I'm in front of my mother and she's fixing my school tie. And she says to me, "Leanne, you have a day off school tomorrow." And saddened, I kind of said, "Why?" "I've just spent a week in school." And she said, "Oh, well, tomorrow is Saturday, it's the weekend, you've actually 2 days off." And I was almost about to put up a fight, and I was kind of like, I don't really want a day off school because I've had such a good time. I don't want days off. And she said, "Well, it's the weekend, tough, that's how it happens." Yeah. I was 3.5. So that's my earliest memory of school, and what that has taught me looking back is that I've always had a love of knowledge and a love of meeting new people, different people. I've always had that, that's always been in me, and of course, that's in everybody. I suppose going from there, school was always really a positive place for me. I was in primary school in Waterford, in Dungarvan. And it was a really, really positive place for me. I never ever felt like I was being treated any differently because of who I was, until one day I was in a resource class. And in that resource class, it was only traveller children, regardless of their age or their ability. And while I was in that class one day, my actual teacher came to the class and spoke to the resource teacher. And they had this conversation in front of me. And they almost had a little bit of a disagreement. And at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on. But my actual teacher said, "Leanne must come back to her own class. She's well capable," was the gist of the conversation. And I returned to my own class. And at the time, I didn't really understand what was happening. But looking back now, I realize the difference between positive and negative discrimination. And I know now I was only in that class because I was a traveller. My capabilities weren't taken into consideration. Now, when I share that story with school teachers or schools in general, they question my ideas on resource classes. And my take on resource classes, yes, avail of it if you need it. Throughout my journey, I've availed of other resources and help when I needed it. But I didn't need it at that time, so I shouldn't have been there. But I do give a big thumbs up to all the hard-working resource teachers out there. They're more than needed for the people that need them. So going on from there, I moved town and I started secondary school. I was the only traveller in that secondary school. And then that was also a very, very positive experience. And I suppose what I want you to keep in mind is my story is a very, very rare positive story of education within the travelling community, okay? So in secondary school, only traveller student for the first year until my sister came the following year. Never ever felt out of place. I was treated exactly the same as everybody else, which was a brilliant thing. But I always remembered feeling alone. Even though I had lots of friends, I felt alone. I felt like there was nobody like me in the school. And I always longed to have a cousin or a friend that really and truly knew who I was and where I was coming from, and the different things that were going on in my life that I almost felt I couldn't share with my teachers. And I suppose what I mean by that is between the settled community and the travelling community, there's a certain amount of customs and traditions and invisible rules that I almost had to live up to, which my teachers didn't know about and didn't understand. Okay, so in secondary school, I didn't really want to be in school. I was considered a bold student. I was given detention for numerous reasons. In the beginning of secondary school, I was quite a good student, but that deteriorated as time went on for whatever reasons, because ultimately I had no aspirations to continue my education or to further it in any way. I knew I had to go to Leaving Cert because that's what was considered of me by my parents. And after that, it didn't really matter. I was gone. I was out of school education. That was all done with. The reason for that was because as a member of the travelling community, and I can't speak for everyone, I can only speak for me, but generally the sense among the community is, and at that time what I truly believed was, people thought, why continue with your education, why further your path in education if nobody from the wider community, the settled community, is going to employ you? By the time I'd reached 16, I had experienced so much direct and indirect discrimination. I really believed that. I truly believed no matter how educated I was, no matter how capable I was doing a job, I would not be employed by somebody who wasn't a traveller. So why bother? My teachers were aware of that attitude, but they ignored it, thankfully. And because my teachers in that school encouraged me to fulfill my potential, my passion in school was art, but it was also business. But when I was finally encouraged to kind of fill out the CAO form, I went with my heart and I put down art instead of business, which I still today think was the best decision I ever made. I said to them, I will go for a week and see what it's like. And if I don't like it, tough, you're being disappointed because I'm leaving. And that's how I approached it. And I really did believe that I might go and figure out it wasn't for me and leave. But after the first week, I stayed for a month. A month turned into a year, turned into 3 years. I added on an extra year to get an honours degree. And while I was in college, I studied art, by the way. While I was in college, I became in contact with another woman who I now also see as a very important person in my life and another mentor, Deirdre Creedon, the Access Officer in Cork Institute of Technology. She encouraged me to take part in a program that herself and a number of other stakeholders were developing at the time. It was a mentoring program for traveller students in second level schools in Cork. I was involved in the design process of that. I now run it. And what we do is we go into schools in Cork and we try and persuade kids to raise their hopes, their ambitions and their dreams in life and truly believe in themselves. So if there's something that you want to do in life, you believe that and you will achieve that. Like for that little guy that said he wants to be a soccer player, I hope in a number of years that we will see you on telly and you'll be kicking those balls and you'll be scoring those goals. Believe it and achieve it and you will get there. So on the back of that, and now I've kind of jumped 5 pages ahead, that was my experience in college. And then when I had done that work, I'd spent a number of years doing that work while I was a student in college, I began to realize, well, you know what, maybe I could become a teacher and I could start to actually influence and change other people's lives, because ultimately that's what your teachers are there for. That's what they should be doing. They should be there to inspire you to do the best that you can possibly do. And I thought, well, maybe I can do that on a day-to-day, and it doesn't really feel like work because I love doing it. And if I can motivate people from my own community, all the better. So I decided to do another year in college. For somebody that didn't want to go at all, I spent 5 years there. Absolutely loved it and realised after 5 years, it took 5 years to change my attitude and my outlook on life. And then I began to believe, well, with a good solid education behind me, I am not going to allow anybody to treat me any differently within society or within the world of work. And I know if I go for a job and I'm the best person for that job, I am going to make sure it's mine. And I did that quite recently. So just in January of this year, I was appointed the new Traveller Education Coordinator of Cork Institute of Technology. So my job now is to return into schools on kind of a higher level and promote education and encourage it amongst members of my community and help them to actually get in. I'm going to jump back now. This is what I say. I write a script and I go off because I don't look at it. Jumping back, so as I'd done the teaching year in college, I'd come out and I'd spent 6 or 7 years working in schools, designing art programs, as I said, getting kids to raise their hopes and dreams. And even though I loved it so much, people have often asked me, how do you separate teaching and making your own art? I can't, because I love doing both so much. But what had happened in those 6 or 7 years was I'd actually stopped making my own, and that really saddened me because I love it. I love it so much. Anybody in the audience that's creative will understand what I mean. It's like if you have a niche, you just need to scratch it. So that was when fate kind of intervened, and I was in a place one night by complete accident, chance, and I heard the name Nora Casey being mentioned, and she was offering some kind of business program. I wasn't too sure what it was, and I said, you know what, I'll take a number and I'll find out more. And I rang up and I figured out what was going on, and I told him on the phone, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I'd love to do, can you help? And it was all positive, yeah, perfect, keep going, keep chatting. And then I said, okay, clarify for me exactly what you're looking for and what do you need from me? And then she mentioned TV, and I hung up the phone. And she rang me back, and she persistently continued to ring me back for about a week before I'd answer. And I said, look, there's not a hope in the world I'm going on TV. You can forget about it. And she said, no, look, can you just meet me and have a conversation? And I suppose where this story is going for all the kids and for anyone else in the audience is, if an opportunity ever falls on your lap and you're not too sure about it or where it's going to go, grab that opportunity with both hands, because you never ever know where it's going to lead. Okay? I did that. She persuaded me to take part. I suppose why I didn't want to take part on TV is because we all know what's already been produced about travellers on TV. A lot of travellers from the travelling community don't agree with a lot of the programmes, and I will mention Big Fat Gypsy Wedding. Sometimes things within those programmes are portrayed as this is the whole entire community. It is not. No two people are the same. No two families are the same. There's 10 siblings in my family, 5 boys and 5 girls. No two of us have the same attitude or outlook on life. So things like that, I was afraid that I would be portrayed in a way that I didn't want to be portrayed in. And I was really, really nervous about taking part. But looking back now, it was one of the best things I ever did, because it gave me a platform and it gave me a voice, and it allowed me to work with people that helped me to further my career in ways that I never believed would ever be possible. So I did that. I took part in that show, and what happened was I worked with Nora Casey. She's former Dragon. I'm not sure if you know her or know of the programme. But what resulted in working with Nora was my first ever solo exhibition. It was exhibited in the Origin Gallery in Dublin a number of years ago. And on that night, it was one of the proudest nights that I can ever remember. And I remember thinking, I gotta do this again. I have to do this again. I have to have this feeling again. And I did, and I created my second body of work following that. So after the first exhibition, I was awarded a number of awards. I was awarded the Percent for Art scheme, which is still currently underway. So basically that means I get to create a public sculpture that would be put in place permanently in Cork City. I was also awarded the Next Generation Artist Bursary, which allowed me to create my second body of work. And my second body of work was entitled Accommodate versus Assimilate, based on my community again. And the reason I chose that was because I'd spent a number of months thinking, what will I do, what won't I do? And then, of course, the tragedy of Cork mines hit, and the aftermath of that really kind of motivated me to get up and do something about it. So what I did was I travelled all around Cork and Galway, Dublin, a number of other places, and I photographed and recorded a number of, let's say, traveller-specific homes. So you had group housing, halting site, campsites, a number of other places. When I talk about the topic of traveller-specific accommodation, and I'm quite aware that I'm a little bit outnumbered here in the room, and it's quite a touchy topic. The word traveller-specific accommodation is written into policy and is written into law, and it is there for a reason. If you care to research why, I would suggest you do so, okay? It's there for a reason. And you say, why traveller accommodation, why traveller homelessness? I know there's wider traveller or homelessness within society. We're all going through it. Everybody knows somebody that's touched by it. But the problem for me was, it's been in my community for 50 years or more. It's always been there. I lived in a halting site. I lived on the side of the road up until I was about 16, 17. And then we moved into a house, and I was there for about 3 or 4 years until I got married. So I'm back in a mobile home. And because I had been not living in that way for a number of years, when I went back on site to take photographs, I left and I came home, and I was actually traumatized. And I was like, if I'm traumatized, what with somebody that completely doesn't know or understand the community or has never been inside a halting site? How would they actually feel? I came home one day after I photographed an 8-year-old woman's mobile home who had been on the housing list for 21 years. I photographed her bedroom that had rat droppings on her bed. I came home and I threw away all my clothes because I was so afraid of what I had touched, basically. And this had been considered. She is paying rent for that mobile home on her unofficial site in Cork. She's paying rent to the council for that. So I'm sharing this because I know there's a lot of people that are completely unaware of the situation. So that's why I did my second exhibition on traveller accommodation. Following that, I was awarded another number of awards, which thankfully leads on to me being able to make more and more and more. Ultimately, not all my work will be about my community because I make a lot of work that's universal and has universal themes, but those themes relate to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from in life, no matter what kind of problems we all have them, we all share them, we all go through the same things. It doesn't matter what level of society you come from. So after that, I suppose, and I've mentioned it already, recently a post came up for this new traveller education coordinator within Cork Institute of Technology. And the minute I saw it, I said, that job is mine. I've got everything they're looking for, and I'm going to make sure that that job is mine. I went and I did that, and I got that job. I was appointed in January. And what I've done in the 2 months that I have been hired, okay, so let me just give you a little bit of context. In CIT at the minute, there's 6 traveller students, 6. 3 identify as travellers and are comfortable working with my office. 3 are girls. 1 does not want to work in our office. We're aware of him, but he doesn't want to involve. And the 5th, absolutely, in the best of her power, said under no circumstances does she want anybody to know that she is a traveller. Now, that's fine, that's okay. There's reasons for that, and we understand that. But then we can't support those people. We can't help them. And I think from my story, if you've learned that thing, it's people who can help and people who can support, can further you, can help you with your success. And I suppose the reasons for that are many. We're trying to tackle it. And how we're trying to tackle it is with positions like mine. So there's 5 students in the college at the minute. In the 2 months that I've started work, by simply sharing information and helping people, supporting them, allowing them to believe in themselves. I have had 2 girls signed up and committed to 2 new courses in a college that is in CIT, 2 girls signed up to CIT, and a 5th guy signed up to CIT for September. So 5 in 2 months. So that's what the power of one person can do if they really want to help and they really want to work with somebody. If they really want to share knowledge and wisdom, that's what the power of one person can do. Other than that, I suppose, and I'm going to share this story, and I'm going kind of, I don't know what way I've delivered this speech. It's gone everywhere. I'm going to leave you with this because I know there's a lot of young people in the audience. Just recently for International Women's Day, I was asked to share a story of mine from school with Leaving Cert students. And because it was Leaving Cert students, and quite surprised me, I'd gone in with a different speech and I ended up saying this because it just came to me. When I was in Leaving Cert, 17-year-old traveller girl in Leaving Cert, and we had the yearbook, and I was asked to fill out my profile for the yearbook, and one of the questions was, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? Now keep in mind, I had actually applied to the CAO at this stage, wanting to do art. I spent quite a while thinking about it, and eventually I had to do it because the deadline was today or whatever. And my friends had suggested, we'll do it for you, and I was like, no, I'll do it myself. And what I wrote was, in 10 years' time, at the age of 27, where do I see myself? I will be married, and I will have 4 kids, full stop. That's what I thought I was going to amount to, and that was it. That's all I believed I could do. And that's what a lot of girls from my community think that's what's expected of them. Think that's all they can do because nobody else will employ them. It's 12 years later. I am married. I have 2 kids. But there's a whole lot more to me. And if it wasn't for the teachers and the mentors who helped me along my path, I wouldn't be here today. So, if I leave you with anything, let it be this. Believe in yourself. Grab those opportunities with both hands and take the help that has been offered to you.